let's talk about Guardians 3, or just the Guardians of the Galaxy. I guess the drama happening recently. So, for people listening that either live under a rock or just don't really care that much, James Gunn, the guy who wrote and directed the first two Guardians of the Galaxy movies, has been axed by Disney. So the reason why this is because a reporter named Mike Cernovich, who basically got his fame from going through leftist people, like political people that are on the left or liberal or progressives, and going through their old tweets or Instagrams and finding things that are have jokes they've told that are in poor taste, and basically does that to expose them as quote unquote the propagandists that they are, which of course is insanely hypocritical of himself. But basically, he went through really old tweets from James Gunn 10 years ago that basically and I'll be the first to say I'm a guy who always defends jokes and free speech. They're definitely not a good look.
No, not at all.
Yeah, they're the Holocaust jokes he told were pretty bad. I mean, I tell offensive jokes, but there's a time and a place for those things, and the fact that he's the biggest philanthropist and advocate for social justice now versus him trying to be a Twitter troll and a provocateur back then. It's quite a jarring tonal shift between the two people. And so Disney fired him, and basically a lot of the cast is boycotting the movie, saying we're not going to do this unless James Gunn can do it because he's so important. So I have a couple thoughts on this. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this.
Well, just to complete what you were saying, the cast did originally try to boycott. Dave Bautista was the one who was most vocal about it. He pretty much said he didn't want to do it anymore, and the cast did have this letter of support where they signed it, sent it to Disney to get him hired back. That didn't really work out. Disney had his hands tied, and they could not hire him back. It was you have to be consistent. If Roseanne Barr gets fired from her show, pretty much the most popular show on your network, for something that she tweeted out, then you have to fire James Gunn for similar reasons as well.
I do think those are kind of different situations, though, right?
Certainly are. But so the problem with that is James Gunn obviously he was aware that these tweets, he had made them in the past. He's atoned from them a long time ago. Before he was hired by Disney for doing Guardians of the Galaxy, he had, obviously when you're going to hire somebody, you're going to vet them as thoroughly as possible. These things came up. He explained himself. He apologized for that publicly and privately. But then they were just in the impossible situation where, because of what was happening currently around those topics, they just could not, in good faith, keep him around.
All right, so let me give you my thoughts on this.
Sorry, just one more thing. One more thing. So Dave Bautista, like I said, he originally was very adamant to not doing the movie, but he did relent. He says he'll do the movie if they use James Gunn's script. So that was the sort of compromise they made. Maybe he's not going to direct it, and I think Marvel can easily find a good substitute director to carry out his vision, maybe a Taika Waititi or something. But then use James Gunn's script, which we know he's completed. The script was done. The movie was supposed to start shooting, I think, September. So it was scheduled to be on time. But then now that you are in a position where you have a script, you don't necessarily have a director. Just bring somebody in, but use his script. And I think the actors will be willing to do it if it was that. All
right. Well, I have a lot of thoughts about that. Number one, I think it's insanely disrespectful to take, part of his vision and not have him be a part of it and, basically put the axe on him. Because let me say my point of view. I fully recognize that the jokes are in poor taste. I'm not saying that they're not. And if you read them, matter of fact, and not know, okay, he was a provocateur back then. He was on Twitter trying to go for cheap laughs and stuff. I completely understand that the reaction to some of the things he was saying, about, the Holocaust, for example, was the biggest one that I read. That I can understand people being outraged about that. But I have a couple different takeaways. Number one, they were jokes. And they were clearly jokes the way they were written. And if you look at his Twitter history, besides those things, it was clear that he's kind of he was kind of a provocateur. Everything that he said was in jest, and I understand that they're very offensive. But people that do comedy, they take risks like that, and sometimes they don't work out. I mean, the best example of that is someone like Bill Burr, for example, or Dave Chappelle, where they take risks and sometimes they really offend people. Number two, it happened so long ago, and they also they vetted him, and he already publicly apologized for that. But because the guy who's essentially an alt-right troll reporter framed it as, oh, this guy's a rank propagandist and a hypocrite, now because of the cancel culture, they're going to abandon the way they actually reacted to it in the first place and then fire him. I don't agree with that, because and just logistically, James Gunn is the guy who you could argue that he made that kind of slapsticky Guardians of the Galaxy tone in Marvel really mainstream. Like, he's the one who took those characters that really no one gave a fuck about, like Rocket Raccoon or Star-Lord, and he made them household names. And not only that, but he made them household names and some of the most important in the MCU. Like, he's the guy who really did a lot for Marvel. And that, coupled with the fact that they already vetted him and he already apologized and already explained himself, and that was satisfactory. Like, now, just because of the whole cancel culture thing, they're going to go back on their original reaction to it. I think that's just, it's a bit hypocritical from my point of view. I can understand the reaction to it, but the fact that not only was this so long ago and clearly a joke, but the fact that they've already reacted to it when they first hired him to do his first, the first MCU movie, I can't get on board with the fact that just they're going to axe the guy's career simply because of the framing in which it was discovered as.
I also I agree with all of that, and I also would like to add, he did after this article came out, or the set of tweets came out anew. He did apologize for making them again, and that's something we haven't seen. I mean, obviously, this is a political issue, like, liberal versus conservative, left versus right. Even, the current people on the right who've been accused of similar things, none of them really, well, most of them didn't really apologize for having done what they did. But, in this case, he recognized he was wrong. He knew he was wrong back then. He apologized before he was hired.
That's what I'm saying.
And then he apologized again. So, obviously, I think, internally Disney does, they do feel bad about having to do this. But I just think they don't really have there wasn't another option.
I think that, but I don't think that that's true. I mean, they've... Like, okay, if this was the first time they had heard about the tweets and like the first time they actually saw them and the first time the public heard about them, then I completely understand that. And I totally agree that, okay, I mean, I'd probably be still pissed that he got fired. But the fact that the same company that looked into him has already heard his apology and have already heard the rationalization for them is axing him. That sucks, because just because of okay, for example, let's say like I tweet something stupid and a former employer essentially like finds it and says, hey, what'd you mean by this? And I would say, look, I'm sorry. It was a joke. It was in poor taste. I didn't mean to offend anybody. I was trying to be a troll. And obviously, like, I've matured a lot since then and it won't happen again. If then, I get a promotion for this, the next stage in this company, and then they ask me about it again, and then I get fired. Like that's just,
that's kind of what happened. That's true.
Exactly. And that's not a right way to do, to respect somebody who clearly did a lot for your company. And not only that, has already been admonished for this by Disney in like 2013 when he was first hired. Like,
right. I agree with that, because, that reminds me of another situation. Okay, maybe I was wrong when I said they didn't really have another option. The other option would have been to weather the storm and stick to their gun, to literally stick to their gun, right? So, for example, DC with Fantastic Beasts, Johnny Depp, his personal issues.
Wait, DC? Oh, Warner Brothers.
Warner Brothers. I'm sorry, Warner Brothers. I get them confused. I get them conflated.
Well, I mean, they're the same shit. So
it's the same. Yeah, Warner Brothers owns DC, also owns like the Harry Potter universe, and Lord of the Rings, etc., etc. Anyway, Warner Brothers could have scrapped, they could have basically stopped production on Fantastic Beasts.
Exactly, because
caved into public pressure.
The fucking domestic assault allegations against him.
Right, but it was a new context because of the whole Me Too movement and everything like that. A lot of these Hollywood big shots basically finding out that they can no longer get away with the behavior they had exemplified.
The casting couch
years
kind of
ago.
Thing.
Yeah, the casting couch kind of thing.
But that's even weird too, because like, James Gunn did not sexually assault anybody. Yes, I agree. He said some offensive shit. Like, I totally am on board with the fact that, yes, those things were in poor taste. They were jokes, and it was clearly they were jokes, but they were in poor taste and offensive. But the whole cancel culture thing can't just be if you say something off color, your whole life is destroyed. Like the Me Too thing, I can definitely sympathize with, because people that rape people or sexually assault people should be admonished as viciously as you possibly can, because you can't get away with that shit anymore.
Right.
But it was like
it's a crime.
Oh yeah, it's a crime. It's not like something you can just apologize for and say I won't do it again. That's what Kevin Spacey has done, because like he actually sexually assaulted people and borderline raped people. And so like, but with this though, first of all, speech is not a crime unless you're actually advocating violence against somebody. And he was not advocating violence. He told a couple of shitty jokes that were just not very good and pretty offensive. Like, I mean, I'll be the first to say it. I tell offensive jokes, and those jokes were in poor taste. But I don't think the cancel culture thing or the whole the Me Too movement really applies here. I really don't, because they're just...
It doesn't.
But the fact that, yes, the sentiment behind the cancel culture is, if you do something in your past that's terrible, we in the future are hypocrites if we support you. But it's just, it's just so hypocritical to me. Like,
yeah, you have to keep in mind like I said, the political dimension behind it, where you have conservatives being, at least as far as they're concerned, being unfairly punished at a higher rate for things than liberals. Like basically, Hollywood being liberal leaning, you have, more leniency towards liberal people who are doing, unsavory behavior. And in this case, again, not unsavory behavior, just bad jokes. But, you can't have Roseanne tweet some racist stuff, get fired from her show, so whatever advantage James Gunn brought to Disney from the Guardians of the Galaxy and his involvement with subsequent projects, like he was a consultant in Infinity War, like Thor Ragnarok, and he was essentially going to be the mastermind to oversee the Marvel space, like the space universe that they were going to do in Phase 4. He was supposed to oversee all of that. You're giving whatever advantage he brought to Disney, like Roseanne, she had the #1 rated show on TV at the time. You fire her because of something racist that she says. By the same token, because she's conservative, you fire her for that. But then you can't have somebody who's liberal leaning, who's very much... And the reason you have to remember that the reason this guy targeted James Gunn is he's very anti-Trump. If you look at his Twitter, he's very, very anti-Trump. And so you can't have somebody who's pro-Trump getting fired and then somebody who's anti-Trump basically getting away with it.
And I agree with the sentiment there, but I do think those are two diametrically opposed situations, because... Number one, James Gunn tweeted these things back in the past. He already apologized for them, and Disney already knew about them. But because of the framing, they had to look at it again. Number two, Roseanne tweeted this not a day before she actually got fired, and not a day before she was already in the spotlight for Roseanne, right? Like, she was already in the spotlight. She tweeted it, and it wasn't like 2 years ago or something. It was like...
in the moment, yeah.
In the moment. And so I think it's completely different, because, you can't... And obviously, I don't want to make the whole social, the society was different back then. But you kind of have to accept it like that. It's like, back then, yes, off-kilter jokes, like people were saying, like, slurs for homosexuals and slurs for black people and slurs for people that are, developmentally disabled and stuff. People said really, really terrible shit back then, before people kind of had their, I guess... social awakening where they
political correctness.
Exactly, the PC culture and stuff. And I think there's positive and negatives about that. But for the most part, I think that people understand what you can say, what you can't say in a public forum.
Right.
But in this case, Roseanne Barr, whatever, she's going to blame Ambien or Xanax or whatever the fuck she blamed. Yeah. She said some outwardly racist shit in a contemporary time during which her tenure was on ABC with the #1 show. I think that's completely different, because James Gunn was already vetted for these things, and he got fired. Roseanne was currently in the middle of her big break as a comeback star in sitcoms and ABC, and then she tweeted this stuff. I think there's a chicken and the egg thing that I really don't think applies to the James Gunn thing. And I can't sympathize with the fact that James Gunn was fired for that. I really can't. I've tried to be like, okay, maybe, it's a bad image, but like, I read more about it and I'm like, no, Disney knew about these things. And just because of the framing, honestly, if a liberal person said those things today and like, said that shit. Like, I think Kathy Griffin's show almost got canceled for the whole Donald Trump thing when she held the head.
Her career was effectively over.
Exactly. Yeah. So there is not a rank, tribalistic, bias between liberal people and conservative people, because yes, of course, like left-leaning ideology is somewhat more socially acceptable than conservative ideology in this this world. I completely agree, and I'm of more in the left than I am the right, so I'm fine with that. But like, there's this whole myth of conservative people being persecuted. Like, did you know that plug my favorite political show, Secular Talk, there was a metadata study, and over 75% of the free speech infarctions on college campuses were geared towards censoring left-wing people, like pro-Palestinian people.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Huge metadata study.
You wouldn't know that based on what you read in the media and stuff.
Exactly. Right? Because, they're a very loud and vocal minority where they're saying, oh, we're being so oppressed, which is hilarious because they're the ones who are saying that, oh, yeah, we're being, you guys are, victim culturing, get the fuck over it, stop whining. And then as soon as anybody disagrees with what they say, they're the ones who are being oppressed. No, disagreement does not equal oppression. People disagree with their shitty ideas because they're shitty ideas. And so, all that considered, I'm sorry for ranting for like 10 minutes on it, but like all that considered, I think it's just wildly inappropriate and hugely hypocritical for Disney to already have known about those things that James Gunn said, him, already have apologized for them, already explained himself, already given the context. But because, they're so afraid of seeming biased, those old tweets that have already been explained to them are the reason why James Gunn is no longer a head honcho in the MCU. That I cannot get behind it. And honestly, I will probably not see Guardians 3 if he's not directing it, to be completely honest with you. Because
but what if they use his script though?
That doesn't matter. Like the principle is still the same, where he's the one, this is his baby. He's the one who made Guardians of the Galaxy a household name. They were off-color fucking people in the comics that weren't even funny. And he made his own brand of branding awesome 70s music to like space opera. Like that's like, no one thought to do that. And the fact that he basically pioneered this new genre that people are even trying to emulate now. And so the fact that they didn't stick up for him is, I think, just it's a statement on, them not being the morally best company, Disney.
I do agree with everything you said. I do think, I just think timing was the biggest issue. I feel like if they had let's say, because I don't remember if this came first before the whole, oh shit, let's fire Johnny Depp from Fantastic Beasts. Like, whichever one came first. Obviously, Warner Brothers stuck with their person, and eventually the movie was going to be made. Obviously, I think they're gonna have some issues promoting it before it comes out. Like, to what extent do you want Johnny Depp involved in like the promotional material, like all these tours they're gonna do? Obviously, he's gonna be asked about it. He's gonna be pissed, and he's probably gonna say something really smart when he's pissed about the interview questions he's getting. So maybe you don't send him out on, like, especially Europe. Like, they don't give a shit. Like those reporters are gonna ask whatever they want. And if you're in a promotional tour and you're doing back to back interviews and everybody's asking the same damn question, at some point you're just gonna be
snap. Yeah.
You're just gonna snap and just talk the most shit that you can afford to talk, to be honest. So maybe the studio says, you know what, it's not safe to send him out there, but we're still gonna keep him in the movie. We're still gonna do the movie we wanted to do. Disney could have done something similar but then again, it's the director. Like, if the movie's coming out and director is not part of the, is not part of the promotional material, then do you think you can actually make money? Like, because the alternative is, like you said, you're probably not going to be the only fan who's not going to see the movie if it doesn't feature his direction. So
it's just a principle thing, man. It's like,
so like, you have to pick your poison. Basically, you're going to suffer at the box office because either James Gunn is not the one who directs the movie, or he's not really involved in promoting the movie. At some point, you're going to have to take a box office hit. But which one can you stomach more for a PR perspective? I think the answer is pretty clear there. And that's the unfortunate thing. I just think it's a timing thing. Also they had this Fox deal going on too. So if the PR wasn't on your side when you're trying to get such a big acquisition, I don't think you want to take the risk of having bad public perception while you're trying to do that.
I just don't like honestly, and Disney didn't even like the ones that I read, Disney didn't even reference the fact that these tweets were like, shown to them like before, when he was first hired by the
no,
MCU.
they didn't. That's true, because
and that's so weird because
I had to dig to find those
same
news.
here.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's a huge part of the story, because it's not like, it's Mike Cernovich, discovered these in a vacuum. Disney and the execs of Marvel already knew about it. They already heard the context of, look, I'm not racist. I'm not discriminating against Jewish people or anything like that. I was a provocateur. I was an asshole, and I've wildly changed my behavior and worldview, and I apologize. But the fact that they didn't bring that part up of the story that's the thing that really discounts it for me. Because like before I knew that, I was like, okay, it sucks. Like I'm a free speech absolutist, so I definitely am on the side of James Gunn, but at least I can understand the sentiment with Disney. After learning that, I really can't understand why they fired him. Like, and even with the whole cancel culture thing, the fact that they already knew about it and then they fired him is just the most hypocritical thing. And I honestly, I'll say it again. If he doesn't direct the movie, I probably will not see another Guardians movie, like that, which just is sad because I love those movies. I loved Volume 1 and Volume 2.
I think Disney knows that, and they're willing to. I don't think James Gunn's career is over the way I think. I do believe
Kevin
Spacey's over. Like, so Kevin Spacey got replaced in the movie. Like, that's
all the money in the world, yeah, and
it costs a lot of money to do that.
Isn't that pretty nuts?
Like,
that
imagine Johnny. That didn't happen to Johnny Depp. Like, imagine just somebody else being cast in that movie, and then you still do the movie anyway. Like, that could have DC could have. I'm sorry, Warner Brothers could have done that. But they didn't, so.
Yeah, and isn't that crazy how Ridley Scott like reshot his movie and was in like 18 days with Chris Plummer?
Yeah, it was very
I was like, damn, like good for him.
And there were other controversies there too, like the whole Mark Wahlberg paid a lot more money than his female co-star. I think it was Michelle Williams. Anyway, whatever.
Okay,
that's a different thing. But
he's been around for like 30 years. Like Michelle Williams is.
Yeah, well, God. Yeah. So, but that's not the point. The point is, he was replaced.
Yeah.
So I think his career is over. I think obviously Weinstein is not gonna produce another movie.
Oh, absolutely.
But I do not believe James Gunn's career is over. I feel like maybe his career at Disney is over for. He understands these things. Like, I don't think he has bad feelings. He understands the nature of it, the nature of the politicized nature of his firing. He understands that. But obviously, he's probably a little bit too talented, a little bit too creative and too unique to keep. And he's young still. He still has perhaps his best work ahead of him. So because of that, I feel like maybe if you give it a couple more years, he'll start off like slow, maybe directing a couple of TV episodes here and there, and then working his way back towards big picture type of situations. But at this point, yeah, I mean, I as far as I know, he hasn't tweeted. I'm not sure if he shut down his Twitter account, but I don't think he's tweeted since he basically was fired. I don't know how long. It's been like half a year at least, so he's effectively off Twitter. Like, he's not doing anything. Like, he has the symptoms of his career being over, but I just don't think that's the case. At least for now. For now, it is, sure, but
yeah,
3 years down the line, maybe he's doing something else.
I really hope that they actually reconsider and bring him back, because it's just that's just so sad. It's like, dude, like he didn't. Yes, he did something wrong in his past, but here he really didn't do anything wrong. Like he's already bared the cross of what happened. He already was embarrassed when they fucking gave him the screen. They went through his Twitter and stuff, and he already talked about it. And the fact that he's already repented for what he's done, and the fact that he still got fired, I think that's just something that I can't really get behind.
No, I agree, and you're not the only one. So
yeah,
now it's just a matter of how many more people think like you in a way that will actually make a huge difference. And obviously the difference you can make here is the box office. The difference between opening at, let's say, 150 million for Guardians 3 versus even half of that, 75 or 100 million, that is huge.
Oh yeah.
So that's the kind of thing is hard to recover from. So we'll find out. Obviously, the movie's been delayed, but the script is there. The pre-production was pretty much done. So it could have been on schedule, but you just got to give it more time. Part of it is basically all of them died after Infinity War, so you kind of do have an out if you wanted to. just kill Rocket Raccoon in in Avengers 4 and you're done with the Guardians. You could do that, but then I don't know. I mean, you have options basically. That's what I'm saying. And obviously, you have to be aware of what the environment is and how to proceed from that. You can always bring him back for this purpose, but you have to be aware of the environment for doing that, and be willing to weather the storm. You didn't weather the storm before you fired him. You could weather the storm after you rehire him. So it's a choice that they're going to have to make at some point.
Yeah. I honestly, if I'm going to predict, I think they will rehire him. I think it'll be a little bit more time before the movie comes out, obviously. But I do think that they're going to rehire him because, like, I don't see the comparison between the thing with Roseanne Barr and James Gunn. I really don't. I think they're completely different.
But the thing about James Gunn's situation is you can rehire him. You don't have to rehire him for Guardians 3.
But
like I said, he was gonna steward the whole Marvel space universe. How many movies can you make within that? Like, let's say you can make a Nova movie. Like, Nova is this character who's essentially a human being raising Xandar, and he becomes like this hero character. You can make a movie about him. James Gunn was already the one responsible for bringing Xandar into the MCU. He could direct that movie. Like, he could write the script, direct it, and then you can put in characters like Adam Warlock or whatever, things that he was already working on anyway. But it doesn't have to be Guardians of the Galaxy 3. You can bring him on for something else. But you don't need a Guardians 3. You have an out. You can kill them. Kill Rocket Raccoon. He's the only one left. Like, Star-Lord is already dead. Gamora is already dead. Groot and Drax are already dead. Mantis is dead. Like, the Guardians are dead except for Rocket Raccoon. If you kill him, you don't have the Guardians anymore. That's an easy way to get rid of him.
I don't think they're gonna do that because
probably not.
Yeah, because they're bent on keeping that cash money. But like, I just.
But they're reshooting now. But you have the option to do it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. But yes, like I agree that there are ways to then incorporate James Gunn without the Guardians of the Galaxy, but to me that's even disrespectful. Like, it's like he's the one who made these characters household names. He's the one who raked in a shit ton of money for Disney. He's the one who gave new life to characters in comics that have no business being on the screen and being even loved by the entire population. He revitalized the genre and he made characters iconic at the same time, and he did it for this company. And now the fact that, again, he already apologized for the tweets, and now, because of the framing, they gave him the middle finger, and I can't get behind that. Like, it's wildly disrespectful. And yes, they could bring him back, but what are they doing? They're bringing him back on their terms for what they want to do, and not for his vision, just because of an old set of tweets. And that's not.
Like I said, weather the storm and go from there. I mean, well, the acquisition with Fox is probably over. I think, once you just don't, you have to mitigate the risks too. Like, if the acquisition, like the entire process is done, I think it is safe at that point to bring him back. Without really, I mean, you'll take a risk. Obviously it'll be bad press, but you just have to weather the storm. They just have to be willing to do that. I think eventually they would. It's just, you have to have the right timing.
Yeah.
Delay the movie, maybe even cancel it, and bring. You have options. Just choose the right one.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna get pissed if I even keep talking about this anymore.